you have an interesting article that Rav Tzuriel put out a while ago also, pointing out that basically the idea of imprisonment as a punishment in legal systems, whether Jewish or Gentile, is against the Torah. Okay, imprisonment is not the right thing. And for maybe if there's enough demand for this, we'll go into the intricacies of this. You do have it that there are certain cases in Tanakh, in the Torah itself, where it says that someone was imprisoned. 3 times in the Torah, they'll say someone, well, it says that, at least among Jews, it says Joseph was in prison, right? That's what the Egyptians did. Is that the right thing? Perhaps not. But it says that, for example, according to one shot, Joshua recommended that Eldad and Medad be imprisoned. Okay? What would that do? Imprison them. Well, what are you going to do? They had a prison in the desert. Apparently, they're a way to hold on to people, because it says that the Mekoshe Sheitzim and the Megadif, okay, Mikalos Hashem, they were actually held. They were arrested. But they were only arrested so that they could ask of God, what is the proper punishment? It wasn't meant to be final punishment. This is how we're going to deal with these criminals. So Rav Tzura believes that imprisonment is unhealthy socially and also emotionally. It's not befitting for Jewish people to have such I guess, a tool, if you could even call it that, have such an option within the legal justice system or the criminal justice system. And he also points out that, for example, what they do to the unintentional murderer in Ir Miklat, even though he's stuck in place, he's definitely not imprisoned. Okay, he can go around the whole city, and technically speaking, he leave the city. It's just he's taking a risk by doing so, but no one's holding him back. And he also has his family there, as Rav Tzuriel pointed out. Okay, he has his wife and children. He can have his visit with his friends. They even send his Rebbe there if he needs to learn. And also, he could be productive. He's able to. He's not in prison. He could actually pursue whatever his career, his craft, his trade was. In the Ir Miklat, he's also in charge of perhaps providing for himself. Once he has a job, so he's supposed to live a regular life. I met a guy here, by the way, he says he never leaves Tel Zion or Kochav Yaakov. He's afraid of traveling. So I actually believe him. But then he made a wedding for his child outside of the Jerusalem, outside of here in Jerusalem. He said it's the first time he left for such a thing like that in years. Okay. And then he disappeared and came back before Yom Kippur. Where were you? Uman. What are you talking about? That's his other exception. Once a year goes to Uman, and the rest of the year he stays put. Okay. So there you go. It's not so hard to live a life like that. And it says here that the fellow trapped in the Ir Miklat has social contact, especially social contact with good people. He's supposed to have Kohanim and Levim around. That's where he's basically in exile. So it's not right that we have imprisonment. It is not a proper Jewish treatment, by the way. I don't think Rav Tzuriel mentions this, but basically being in prison, especially in Chutz La'aretz, means it concentrates all the worst people in the world so they can learn how to be more criminal from each other. Yeah, sometimes it's rehabilitation. What do they call it in America? They call it euphemistically corrections. Okay? Yeah, they call it corrections, tikkunim. Okay, corrections department. But as you know, you're putting all the criminals together so they can learn to be more criminal toward, especially from each other and toward each other, doesn't exactly work. So someone's going to ask, so what are we supposed to do with these violent criminals? Like we said last week, you have real criminals among the Jewish people. The Torah prescribes what to do. Thieves are supposed to return their money. Chazal had ways of dealing with repeat offenders. Such a thing shouldn't exist among Jewish people, but there are ways, physical punishments, basically. Okay? But that should be good enough. And as for Gentiles, let's say we have a Gentile murderer. Unfortunately, there are many in Israeli prisons. They're even talking about they're going to get legal representation. They have to be brought in front of court. You have enemy combatants, okay, so-called Nukba terrorists, etc. And they have been incarcerated. And for many of them, they're going to receive, let's say, some sort of imprisonment, maybe a life sentence, which will be commuted to early release for any number of stupid political reasons, right? What does the Torah say we're supposed to do with all these people? The answer is they were supposed to have been killed long ago. You weren't even supposed to take them captive. And if they are taken captive and they are guilty or they have Jewish blood on their hands, they are to be put to death. And if they declare their intention to kill Jews, they are to be put to death. Basically, death is the only solution for them. It's similar to what one of the sages said regarding the ox. The ox that's wild, it gores people. It's not tame. It's actually known to want to charge at people and stab them with his horns. So one of them felt that in order to clear the owner of liability, the owner basically has to just kill his ox. Even if he locks his ox up, in a maximum security prison, as well as he could, he ties it up with chains, and it still managed to hurt someone, he is still legally liable for what happened. Why? Because the only solution for such an ox is the knife, the slaughter knife. Okay, eat the ox. So too, the only legal solution offered by the Torah for criminal b'nei Noach, okay, kal v'chomer, those who are actually trying to destroy the Jewish people, is death. That is the only acceptable solution. The problem is also in today's society, we're so used to all sorts of crazy things. I remember we've been brainwashed, basically. There's so many ridiculous ideas that people actually believe and take for granted, and we have to get them out of our heads. I remember the first time, it was about 10 years ago, I went to a party. I shouldn't have been there. And there was a neighbor invited by, the Baal Simcha, and he was saying how a trans man is a woman. The big lie that's in America. The people are waking up to this thing. I thought the guy was a Meshugana. Thank God I'm disconnected from the culture and things like that. Don't know who they're talking about. But that was just like, wow. And he's repeating something he was told to say. From now on, this is what you have to say. That's a ridiculous idea. That's almost like a joke. That's like a prank. Okay. Like I said, if I wanted to ruin people's lives, I tell them that carrots are chametz on Pesach. To see if it would take off. Like it's a chumrah not to eat carrots. I don't know why. It might be chametz. And see if it would take off. If people would actually start believing that in 100 years from now, carrots would be off the menu. But this seems to be a prank. This is an utterly nonsensical idea. Politics are politics, but there's certain ideas that are patently absurd, that make no sense. They're suicidal. And yet people have it. Remember when we had to explain what the Oslo peace process, so-called, the Oslo Accords, when we were first teaching it to high schoolers 14 years ago, their first reaction was how ridiculous such an idea was. But in the 90s, a lot of adults had convinced themselves, they deluded themselves into believing that such a thing could happen. And this particular myth that somehow we could get along with those who are sworn to destroy us and take away the land of Israel from us, we could actually get along with those people, is patently absurd. Yet, it still is going on. The people running the government right now and the people running the military are possessed of ideas that are not part of a legitimate political discussion, different opinions and viewpoints. They're just delusional, insane ravings. Okay? There's nothing there. If you want to win a war, you actually have to win a war. You cannot win a war by feeding your enemy, by pulling your punches or withholding whatever it is you're doing. Okay? I'm surprised that so many Jewish people are even volunteering until this point. They're excited about fighting in the current war. It seems eminently clear that the commanders have no intention of winning this war. Otherwise, they would have won it already. And they wouldn't be doing half the things they're doing. So, we're trapped. There are too many bad ideas. Basically, anything you could get from anywhere except from studying, let's say, Talmud and Rishonim is a puzzle idea. Yeah, we all tiftachu v'ndiviim. People are so enamored of also all sorts of, people out there, speakers. Everybody loves Trump. We've been warning people. Okay, Jonathan Pollard said this week, don't think Trump is some sort of messiah. Of course, we're very, very cautious with regards to people like him. People like the prime minister, even though he's been prime minister for so long, you think he would have ordered something, obviously. People like listening to Carolyn Glick, she seems to know her stuff and her politics and her history, and she's involved with all the politicians, but she also always devolves into some sort of Bibi cheerleader. Like Bibi could have done all sorts of great things if only there weren't all these people holding him back. I don't believe that for 1 minute. So it hurts her credibility, and the people around here are also enamored of this British commentator, Douglas Murray. You've heard of him? Oh, he's coming with Ben Shapiro to speak in Israel. Everybody loves that guy. Okay. He's a smart guy. I remember hearing him before the current war started. He's our biggest cheerleader. He's the biggest pro-Israel voice in the British scene, the international scene. And I appreciate what he's saying. Once again, like other Hasbaraniks, if he's so correct, and Carolyn Glick and the rest of them are so correct, why isn't Israel doing it? Israel's in the right, etc., but not doing it. But not only that, we also have to remember that this fellow is a Russia. Okay, he might be advocating for us politically, and everybody's they really like him. A lot of religious people like him. They have to remember he's a Russia. He's a flamboyant, unrepentant, and even though that does nothing to me, that's not my problem. He's not harming anybody else. He's still a wicked person. I have to explain it to someone, just like Trump. Trump might be good to you now. He might not be stealing from you and even could help you. But if a person is doing major averas, chiyuve skilo, or for a guy, it's isuri maves, right? We have to put them to death for such a thing. They are halachically rishayim. They're not ra, like the Vilna Gaon puts it, but they're rishayim. Okay, they are not our role models, and we do not look to them. We should be looking to meritorious bnei Noach. There are bnei Noach who are moral people. There are bnei Noach who could be considered chachmei umos ha'olam and chasidi umos ha'olam. Yeah, it's better than, yes. I think it makes no difference. It makes no difference if you have a guy who's advocating for the Jewish people in Israel, etc. He's great. He's a great mouthpiece to the world, but he's an idolater, so that doesn't really help me. He's a Russia. No, you could be a good guy and not be an idolater. Then you'll be no. A guy doesn't have to be a Oved Zara. They're good goyim. They're goyim who are not over Isur Rayos. They're goyim who are not thieves. They're goyim who are not idolaters. Okay. No, I'm just saying that he is what we would call a Russia for all his previous deeds. Okay, a big adulterer. Okay, he was over on Isser Ashes Ish many times by his own admission. Okay, well, no, yes. Okay, our sages and Rishonim believed that there are decent Gentiles out there, and I believe that too. But we cannot lionize those who are certainly not role models. I'd appreciate very more if, let's say, we had some better goyim out there, and he's a Jew, and he's also, and I disagree with his religious things. We could talk about him, but we don't need to. Okay, let's get to the Rambam. Yeah, the prime minister, we said all sorts of things about him. We don't trust him. The rabbi has a video about that, so go check that out.